Hello and welcome everybody. Today I'm very pleased to be talking to Felix Mueller, who is the author of Reversing Polycystic Kidney Disease. And let me just try and do my usual trick of not getting it in focus. And I can see that's not in focus really at all. I don't know why it never works. Welcome, Felix.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So Felix has suffered from, actually, I don't like to use that word suffered, but has had been diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease since he was, I think it was the age of 12. Is that right?
Yeah, so we got the first ultrasounds where we could see some cysts at 12, and then we got the official sort of family-wide diagnosis a couple years later.
And what I thought was very interesting about the book was that it goes into basically, there aren't many books around kidney health because it's very much, drink lots of water and that's how you look after your kidneys and have a generally good diet. But there doesn't seem to be many books out there or much research based on how can you really look after your kidneys properly. And I do think that kidneys, I was going to say, they don't get the sort of exposure that they should do on the basis of how important they are for our daily function, our
Yeah.
life. I just find it really surprising. But I think maybe, Felix, it would be a good idea if we could start off just talking about your own journey and, as with a lot of these things, how hard it is to get a diagnosis when you have to go through all the things that might be wrong with you before suddenly they decide, well, this is what you've got. And then your journey towards actually reversing your condition, which I think is absolutely amazing because I think most doctors will say that's impossible. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And, let's examine how you did it.
Yeah. Well, as you said, I was diagnosed in childhood, and that was just sort of the diagnosis of what was seen on the ultrasound. And then a couple years later, around 16 years old, is when the rest of my family got the genetic test, and I got the genetic test, and we all found out that it was called that. It was called polycystic kidney disease. At the time, we had no idea what it was. Of course, the doctors were very quick to tell us the standard assessment, which is you can't really do anything. So, just keep your kidneys warm, limit protein, which is an interesting recommendation, as we might be talking about later. Yeah, and then I sort of, just went about my life because there was really was communicated to me that there was nothing that we could do. So there was no reason to sort of think about it much. And then it took some time until other things happened in my life that pulled my attention towards the topic of my health, really.
Could,
So,
could we just go back a bit? If we could
yeah.
just explain to people actually what the condition is, because I
Oh,
think
yeah,
people may have heard of it, but actually not really know what it was, and what your symptoms were.
sure. So the thing about PKD is that so polycystic kidney disease is the cysts can start to appear very early in life, as they did with me, but it is possible that you don't really notice that you have it until you're, 50, 60 years old when you start to get some issues. The issues can range from back pain or side pain to just a lower kidney function, which is then apparent on sort of a regular blood test that you do at your annual doctor's visit. And then they ask, why is your kidney function so low? And only then do they then decide to do an ultrasound. And then usually what they discover is that the kidney is sort of unrecognizably deformed by a lot of cysts. So it really looks like if you blew up 1,000 balloons in your child's birthday party room. So it is unrecognizable. It looks like cauliflower or whatever you might want to
And I know
say
it's
in a late stage.
and as a very ignorant question, do you get it in both your kidneys or just one?
Yeah, both kidneys, and it can even affect other organs like the liver and even pancreas and other. It's not as common, but the liver is
Hmm.
very common.
Okay. And so, yeah, sorry. So you start for, so your symptoms from this.
Yeah, so in my case, when I was 12 years old, there weren't really any symptoms to talk about. Luckily, I was feeling fine, and kidney function was normal at that time. There was no real noticeable issue for me, and my dad was very lucky as well. My grandma was very lucky. So for me, there was not a huge issue with symptoms right away. And then I was able to sort of stave that off through the program that I'm doing. But other people do have symptoms very early on. So there are people who have a high blood pressure for sure, but also yeah, pain in the sides, um, and of course everything that can come with low kidney function later on, like itching the skin, stuff like that. But it usually symptoms don't start until maybe like 40 years of age.
Mm-hmm. And then once you'd found, what I think would be interesting to know is because you said as you got older, you started sort of recognizing and starting investigating.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't really that I was just interested in finding out about PKD. It was more that other parts of my health started being a problem for me. And at the time, I didn't know what it was, but my overall health got worse. So I started getting allergies and stuff like that. And I also started to feel not very well, feel depressed. And it accumulated to something called adrenal fatigue. So on a blood test or on a saliva test, you can see that your blood cortisol level or your saliva cortisol level, which is also called adrenaline, so the stuff that keeps you awake and makes you excited, it was very, very low. And for me, that was new, and I felt off. I felt very tired in the mornings. So, and there's a lot of people who probably can relate to that. But it was really extreme. So it took me about half an hour in the morning just to, you know, just to get up. And I used to take a bath because showering was too exhausting. So I was really down. And for 24 years old back then, that was not any way that could yeah, that I wanted to be.
Mm.
And then I was very lucky to sort of discover the world of health podcasting, which I'm involved in as well now. And then I found some podcasts that were relating to that. And in one of those podcasts, I found a method of addressing adrenal fatigue, which was called the Kalish method. For everyone listening, I can only recommend that. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And they use hormonal precursors to offset whatever you're missing at the moment, and then they bring you back into the normal range. And as soon as you're there, you can stop taking it. So it's not like you're on those precursors for the rest of your life, but they bring you back to health. And that sort of got me hooked because I thought, wow, if I can do that, then what else can I do for my health?
Mm. And I think that's really important, isn't it? Is one of the things that I think we're very bad in the West is once we get onto a medication, we carry on taking the medication without querying why we're taking it. And then you get the accumulation of too many drugs and, offsetting each other. And I think what you've just said is very interesting, is the fact is that there are, it's worth looking at those things that can help you. And once your body gets there, because sometimes your body just needs to have that help to kickstart it to get to the level that it should be, and then your body can take over naturally.
Yeah, and it's so great if you find a practitioner that understands that mindset, right? Because
Mm.
most don't. So most doctors aren't really trained in holistic thinking, and most not even in nutrition, which is amazing to think about. And many people hear this, when many people hear this the first time, they can't really believe it. They really expect doctors to know things about nutrition, but they don't. And it's not part of the training. And
No.
yeah, in the West, we take one medication after another, and they all try to fix the issues that the first one created.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from there, obviously a lot of your book is very much about examining where you are and your health. And then from there, okay, how do we then go and sort it out? And the foundation for that is diet. And that came from you reading a book by, I have written his name down because I hadn't heard of it, and I can't believe that I haven't, Dave Asprey.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was so kind to write the foreword for my book as well. So,
Yeah, and
uh,
that's called the Bulletproof Diet. And
yes.
once again, all of these things, I think regardless of whether you have some health concerns or just looking to lead that healthy life, these are the things to certainly have a read and see if that would help suit you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a great framework because the bulletproof diet really and I got on this because of my adrenal fatigue. I didn't even do it before the kidney back then. I only later noticed that it helped me with that. But it combines so many cool things. It combines eating organic, right, which
Mhm.
anybody should do, and it just came out that actually not eating organic is as large a risk factor for cancer as is smoking. Isn't that amazing?
Wow. Where
So
was
the
that from?
pesticides. I don't remember the publication, but it was a study from this year. If you just put it in Google, you'll find it right away. So non-organic food equals smoking cancer risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. So the diet combines eating organic, and it also combines eating low carb at least some days of the week. So it is important for our body to learn to make energy also from fats instead of carbohydrates. And most people, they run on carbohydrates every day of the year and they never get to the point where they can make energy from fat. But it's so important because we store, like, even the slimmest of people store 20, 30,000 calories of fat on their bodies, but it's just 2,000 calories of carbohydrates in the muscle and the liver. So if you're not able to make energy from fat, then that means you're also not able to make energy from the fat you store on your body, which means that you're going to run into energy deficits very quickly. And many people can relate. If they get up in the morning and they want to go out and have a run, they have to have something to eat before that because otherwise they're going to feel very, very bad. And as soon as you start giving your body a couple of days per week where you don't have carbs, where you just have the fats and the protein, then the body can sort of learn that again because we come into the world in a state where you can do that. It's called ketosis. And then you get to a state where you don't have an issue getting up and going out and having a run without eating. And you can eat afterwards and you're just feeling fine. There's just so much more buffer there. So that is also one very important aspect of the diet. And the other one
Mhm.
is really that it limits anti-nutrients, which many people have never heard about. But there are foods that don't just have nutrients, which we need, but they also have anti-nutrients, which means they rob us of nutrients that we already have. So, for example, a very common example is if you have whole grain rice, the outer shell of the rice, it contains phytic acid. And this phytic acid actually binds to minerals in our bodies, which then makes them unavailable for us. So, in the end, if you eat whole grain brown rice, you would think you get some nutrition because there's some nice vitamins in there for sure. But it's actually at the same time robbing you of minerals you already had. So you're getting a net negative.
Hmm.
So these kinds of anti-nutrients are also limited by this food list that is part of the bulletproof diet.
Yes, no, and I went through the food list, and some of them seem counter intuitive in many ways, exactly like the brown rice. So we're told white rice is bad, but have some brown rice. So I think it's one of those things, isn't it? You have to look and do your own research to make up your mind. And I think that we've all now learned that there's so many different fads of diets. And in the UK, we were told many years ago, don't eat eggs. It's very
Oh,
bad. I mean, that's years ago, but I think lot of people of our members will remember that. And then, of course, now we're allowed to eat eggs because they're a good source of protein. And
hmm
so it is, I would always say to people, if you think something's a fad diet, go and have a look at it to understand it and what do you think? Because at the end of the day, it has to be in your own judgment, I believe, of, what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah, and also we have so many generations of ancestors to look back on. And if we are somehow getting the idea that something that they were doing for hundreds or thousands of years is suddenly a big issue, then that should always evoke a big question mark in everybody hearing that.
Yeah. I think though that we do have to be careful because so much of our food is genetically modified. So what might have,
Yeah.
I think they always quote a lettuce, what was, lettuce is good, but actually go and have a look at some of the lettuces that are just pumped full of rubbish that you do have to be careful looking back. to see what is in lettuce, which is obviously why you stress the organic is ever so important.
Yeah, and it's getting more important by the day. You know, the pesticide lobby is not cutting back, and yeah, we can actually regard the organic price as the normal price, and then you're getting a discount if you're willing to eat some poison.
Yes. And absolutely. And if you go and look at I don't know if this is appropriate to say really, but you look at, where we get our clothes from. We go for cheap clothes. And why do we get cheap clothes? Because we've got cheap labor, we've got bad
Yeah,
labor, which is
yeah.
then the same going through to the food. It's the same sort of principles. There's no shortcut on any of this.
Yeah, that's true. And even with clothes, there's non-organic cotton, which you have to wash a lot to get the pesticides out of. And then there's so many clothes that are based on synthetic fiber. And
Mm,
especially if you wear like underwear made of synthetic fiber, like that super stretchy stuff or the sports bra and whatever, these things contain plastics and they leach into the skin and they have hormonal like properties. So, especially underwear should always be organic cotton.
yeah. I was interested in your diet. What I mean, in your book, you give some really good and I like simple recipes. It's simple to understand, and it's simple to understand the principles in order for you to then adapt what you would be normally eating to what would actually help you. And one of the things I thought was interesting was mold-free coffee.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, and because you'd written it, what I suppose is that American spelling is MONLD as
Hmm.
to M as opposed to our English spelling MOULD. And I was thinking, is that a different form of coffee? I mean, I think I must be
Oh,
very stupid, but I just thought I need to really understand what it was. And so that actually took, and that's what I mean about investigating, that took me down a whole thing of understanding where the plastic goes and the mold that goes into coffee and then actually making it. And you give a great description of how your day starts with how you make your coffee, what you use, and that looked really good. I mean, is it very sweet? Maybe tell everyone about your coffee, which just to put into context, because you're definitely a great believer in at least an over a 12-hour window of eating, of sort of the intermittent fasting type of approach. Is you're saying that having this coffee that you make is a really great substitute that gives you perhaps another couple of hours before you feel the need to start eating for the day.
yeah, that's such a great hack. So all the credit goes to Dave Asprey for this. He came up with it, and it's actually based on something that the people in Tibet are doing. So when they ride around with their yaks, they actually carry a little blender and some yak butter, and they make yak butter tea because they also know about the powerful benefits of this kind of concoction, which is amazing. Because if you think about the weight that they have to carry around, that they would actually bother to bring a blender, it has to be really, really important. So it's basically mold-free coffee, which you already alluded to. So it's coffee that's been tested and produced in a way that doesn't produce as much mold as other brands might. So it should be mold-free. And then you put your coffee into a blender and you add some butter and some MCT oil to it. So MCT oil is an extract from coconut oil. It's about 5% of coconut oil, and it goes directly to the liver and makes energy in the form of ketones in the liver. So that's a great supplement to already give you a boost of energy. And then you have the butter, which should be grass-fed, and as we recently learned, should also be from a packaging that's made from parchment paper, because these standard some kind of foil-based butters, they contain some forever chemicals, which has recently come out. So you find this great form of butter somewhere, and you put that in your coffee about a 1-to-1 ratio. You could do a tablespoon of butter, a tablespoon of MCT oil, and then you blend it on a real high setting. And what that does is the butter will emulsify with the MCT oil. So it will create hundreds of millions of little tiny tiny fat droplets, and that means that the MCT oil is not just going to be in a big glob on the top of your coffee floating around, but it's going to be divided into these small micelles, and that means it's going to be very, very easy for your body to absorb it, because otherwise your bile would have to create those little micelles. But you're already putting all the energy in with the blender, which is why it's so important. And that way you can absorb it a lot better, and it gives you the ketones based on the MCT oil. The coffee also increases your ketone levels. And the result is you drink this, and it's about, 400 calories if you do it that way, which is a lot.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but if you're not worried about calories, which I'm not, and I actually lost about 17 kilograms with this, then you can have this with no problem inside your fasting window, which is very important because we want to have a fasting window every day, except maybe one day a week, of about 16 hours. And that makes it so much easier to stick to that window, because we can have this when we get up in the morning, and we still count that as a fast. And then we can have lunch at whatever, 1 p.m. So it's very easy to stay with it, and it gives you a lot of energy. You just feel great.
Does it make though? So for instance, I quite like black coffee. Would
Yeah.
I find it very sweet?
Yeah, I guess you could say that it tastes more like a latte.
Yeah. No, I was definitely, and I actually went and looked up the oil that you mentioned as well, and suddenly realized it's everywhere. And in our country, it's in Holland and Barrett, and it looks such a really good oil to put across your food and to use day to day.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I do recommend to basically everyone, but especially to PKD patients, to add a tablespoon of C8 MCT oil to basically every meal, because it just gives you a lot more energy. And even if you're having carbs, which normally makes your body unable to produce this kind of ketone energy, which is based on fat, even when you have those, you can still get ketones if you use MCT oil. So it's a great hack.
Hmm. And the other thing that you talk about, which you alluded to, we might touch upon, is about protein.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody is told one of the standard things, as you said at the beginning, was if you've got kidney disease, then be very careful of your protein levels.
Yeah, yeah. The main reason that nephrologists say this is because when you do have pre-existing kidney failure or large late-stage kidney disease, then your body is worse at getting rid of the quote-unquote waste that is produced when you have protein, which is called nitrogen, right? And the nitrogen is usually excreted, and it's excreted through the urine, and it's found in the blood with BUN, blood urea nitrogen. That's the marker that they measure at the lab, at the nephrologist. So as soon as you have kidney dysfunction, your BUN is going to go up because you have difficulty excreting the nitrogen, but it does not make it worse by itself. So this is the big difference to understand. So if you're at a point where you can still excrete it reasonably well, then it's not going to make your kidney dysfunction worse. To the contrary, animal protein is actually the only thing that has been found to be able to increase kidney function in a dose-dependent manner. So the more, the better, which is interesting because
Mm.
even people at the PKD Foundation, they will say, oh yeah, sure, animal protein increases kidney function in dose-dependent manner. This is why we have to limit it. And they don't even bother to explain that.
Mm.
So it does do that because it increases the size of the filtration units of the kidney, similar to how would increase your biceps, It's basically the same process. So if you're not consuming enough protein, then that will actually increase the speed of your decline.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Because I think it's like if you don't do something, it's not going to be functioning as well.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna lose the functioning
Yeah.
units faster than if you had enough protein to actually keep them working. Of
Mm.
course, if you have another thing that is impacting your kidney function, like diabetes, or you have toxic exposure, so other factors that are going to worsen your kidney function, protein is not going to stop that, but it's going to give your body the chance of repairing damage and of increasing the capacity that is left. However, getting rid of the actual insult is another thing, which also has to be done.
So, um, would you say that are you in a permanent ketose? What would you state?
Ketosis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in ketosis about 6 days of the week, and that is the standard template that I suggest to people, because if you do it if you do it continuously, which I have been doing for about 2 years in the beginning, then you run the risk of actually decreasing thyroid hormone, decreasing testosterone, decreasing other sex hormones, and also over time chronically elevating your blood sugar, which is weird because you're actually limiting carbs, so your blood sugar should go down, which it does in the beginning. But then if your body's noticing, okay, I'm not getting any carbs ever, then it sort of starts to compensate for that and increases its own production of blood sugar from muscle, actually. So with a long-term ketogenic approach, you would, in theory, be losing a little bit of muscle and then increasing your blood sugar, which basically makes it impossible for you to reap the benefits of the ketosis that you're doing it for. So the way to mitigate that is just to have carbs intermittently. In my case, I do it once a week. And on that day, I go all out, right? I replace all my vegetables with, rinsed, washed, organic white rice, something like that, to really get up the carbs on that one day, refuel, and then go right back into ketosis the next day.
Yeah. Which basically means what you're doing is you're burning the fat from your fat. Does that make sense? I don't know but what
Yeah, also.
your energy is coming from what you have stored, as opposed to the stuff that the whatever carbs you're taking in, just taking energy immediately from that.
Yeah.
But once a week you make sure that you put in, so your body doesn't think that it's not having these products. So your
Yeah,
body's
I would say 6 days a week. Within the fasting window, I'm pulling energy from my stores. However, then in the feeding window, like if I have a ketogenic meal, of course, I'll also pull the energy from the fat that I'm eating, right? So if I'm gonna have a meal with some nice steak or some butter on top, I am gonna convert that to energy. But then also, if it's not enough, then my body doesn't have a problem with offsetting that by using some stored body fat.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and I think one other thing to touch upon is obviously, and it is standard with how we should be looking after our bodies anyway, is you mentioned exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. So especially in the case of PKD. So, I mean, people know they should be exercising. This is not new. Um, but what is new, or what is a new way to think about things, is that fasting, for example, becomes much more efficient when you're exercising regularly. So your bodily fitness, your state of your muscle actually influences how quickly you're going to reap the benefits of a fast. Because if you're just needing more protein because there's more muscle to be maintained, then your body gets into a state of protein deficiency very fast compared to somebody who's not exercising. So and there have been studies very recently, and I mentioned one of them in the book, and it's fascinating because somebody who's in a very, like, in the top 25% of their age group, they will get into the benefits of fasting after just 2 hours of fasting. And somebody who's not there, they take 36 hours for the same benefits to occur. So that's a huge difference. So right out of the gate, fasting gets a lot more efficient when you're exercising. The other benefit is if you're doing strength training, which everybody should be doing. It doesn't matter how old, doesn't matter which gender you are. Strength training with high weight, so about 80% of what you can do at your maximum, so 80% of your maximum weight should be what you're lifting about once or twice a week. And if you're doing that, then of course, also, if you're in a fasted state, it would be even better. You're increasing the need of protein even more inside your body. And then you're sort of giving your body the message to find protein wherever it can. Of course, the only option is inside your own body. And then it's going to scour for damaged tissues. And that can be warts, skin tags, but it can also be tumors or cysts, which is the reason why fasting is so effective in many diseases, because tissues that shouldn't be there just can only be removed once the body's in a protein deficiency state. And we can amplify this effect with exercise. And then, of course, muscle building, very important. And we're sort of targeting the growth mechanisms that we have in the body towards the muscle that we exercise, and we pull it away from anywhere that we don't want growth. For example, in my case, the kidneys. We are saying to the body, use the protein, but use it here. Let's have growth in the biceps and the legs, and let's not have growth in the kidneys that will increase cyst growth.
Mm. And I think that absolutely makes what you've just said at the last bit really makes sense, is to where you should be, where you're channeling the protein.
Yeah, you're really telling your body, put it here, and
Yeah,
let's
not
keep it away
there.
from the kidneys. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
absolutely. And I've listened to quite a lot recently about, you know, the advantages of fasting on really making your body heal itself.
Yeah.
And I just find it sort of fascinating to hear. So if you were to stop taking this diet now, would you then go back to having the issues with polycystic kidney disease?
Oh yeah, no doubt. So to be clear, the book is called Reversing Polycystic Kidney Disease and not curing polycystic kidney disease or something like that, because we're not curing it. We
You're
are
managing it.
reversing the disease course. And that is very important for people to understand. So it's still there. The mutation is still there. But instead of every year being a bit worse and every year the kidney growing a little bit, we are shrinking the kidney a little bit and we're getting a little bit better. And we're still going to have cysts on the ultrasound, on the MRI. It's still going to be very apparent. But the point is, we're hopefully not proceeding towards a point where we're going to need dialysis in the future. We're going to keep the kidney function, improve the kidney function. In my case, I improved it by about 50 points. So you could think of it as sort of a percentage. I was down to the mid 80s, and now I'm back at 134. So it doesn't really top out at 100. It's not really a percentage, but for people to sort of understand the numbers a little bit better. Yeah.
No, that's excellent. And I know that you've built a community yourself to try and support the community with telling them about your diet and your plan. And I think did I read that you lecture for Cleveland University or?
Yeah, I gave a lecture at a Cleveland clinic for the nephrology department.
Okay. And so your aim is to spread the word to the world.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super thankful that our community has been allowed to thrive for now. On Facebook is where we have it. And when I started out with this, I was posting on all sorts of other communities about the successes that I've had, and the reactions of people were so discouraging. Most of the people, they thought, oh, snake oil salesman, even though didn't have anything to sell. No book, nothing. There was nothing I was selling. I was just telling people about, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what's working for me. And they thought it was so impossible that they removed me from most of the groups. So that sort of forced me into creating my own community, which of course was the best thing that could have happened to me, as it is in life a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we have a community that's nearing about 6,000 members. So still far away from the 12 million worldwide that have this, but at least 5,500 people have the chance of finding this information. And even, how it is on these communities, not everyone reads the documents and not everyone is actually doing what is recommended, but there's a lot of people in there, and we do get a lot of great results.
And I think with these things is that you know it's not easy. It's not easy to follow these diets until you get it to being your way of life. Because it's obviously, as we know, it's much easier to go into, if you go to a petrol station, just pick up a bar of sugar and then instantly you've got a bit of energy going on.
Yeah.
That's very easy. But if you flip it over and put the work in, it's all about putting the work in to yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to spend some time to get it right. As soon as you do get it right, it does get a lot easier. So for me, it's not really work anymore. So when you get it to work in your favor, once you get the regimen down, then it's not really that much work anymore. Because, if you're home and your kitchen is sort of geared towards having the right stuff, then you're not really tempted by subpar foods all the time.
No.
But it can be very difficult if you're out and about and with friends and they're eating, you know, all the cakes and pizzas and you're not. So I can definitely relate. But at some point, your body sort of understands this is not food. So we're going to stop craving it. So I don't crave bread, for example, because it's not food. I don't walk by a bakery and think, oh, wow, I would love to have this. I don't really care much for it anymore. I do like other things, you know. I like some chocolate, and there's no issue with having chocolate once in a while if it's on a carb day. That's fine. However, baked goods a lot more of an issue because they do have some anti-nutrients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been really interesting talking to you, Felix, and been really interesting reading your book because I learned loads of things that I didn't know about, you know, general nutrition as well as actually thinking and being mindful of how we look after our organs.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and I wish you well in spreading the word.
Thank you so much for having me on,
Thank
and
you.
see you in a bit.
Cheers.